ready to get started now? We've had a good morning visit, and we got up early, and some of us never got to bed apparently. So we may have a lot of action from the audience this morning. We are starting a new book of lessons this quarter. We've been studying about King David for the past 3 months, and apparently I have no good memory. But we started out early last year in the book of Matthew, and we're going to go back and continue in the book of Matthew. And we're starting at Matthew chapter 18 this morning. And we're going to do chapter 18, verses 1 through 14 is what we're going to be looking at. The name of this lesson is The Child and the Kingdom. And our golden text for the morning, it says, "But Jesus said, Suffer little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And this morning our lesson aim is, "He that would be greatest in the kingdom of heaven must be as humble and pure and teachable as a little child." So we're going to change gears a whole lot from, if we remember all the studies that we've had of David over the last several months, that he was a man that was seeking God, but we know that he wasn't a perfect man. We remember that he stumbled a lot, and there were a lot of good things that David did, but there were several things that he did that caused him a lot of pain and heartache that never really quit for him. But David, even to the end of his life, he sought God. You know, we talked last week, he was wanting to build the temple to God, but God wanted his son to be the one to do that. But starting, we're going to be looking at Matthew, and we had talked also a couple weeks ago about Jesus' birth. Of course, we just went through Christmas season, and we talked about how if people just kind of have a Christmas, Easter relationship with the Lord, that all you tend to know is that Jesus was born at Christmas and that he died on the cross, and you really don't have a good understanding of exactly what it meant. We had talked about who Jesus exactly is, that Jesus was the Lord of the universe who made himself into flesh and came and lived on this earth and gave himself as a sacrifice to us. And, you know, that's something that's of utmost importance. It's the whole essence of the Bible, you know, that the Lord of the heaven loved his creation enough that he would put down his own life, that he, you know, as God, he can do whatever he wants to do, but he made himself a human that felt the pain, that knew, had the mind of us, but he was a perfect, flawless man. So that, you know, and there's never been anyone on earth that can say that and be truthful, and there never will, you know, and be a perfect man other than Jesus. So we're going to take some time to study Jesus, his teachings, what he said, what, you know, why he came, what he came to earth to teach us. We talked about the Bible and how some people discount it as just, you know, it's a book written by man and it means nothing. But somehow this book, as Neil had put it, it's like for thousands of years, why would this book be on the bestseller? Why it keeps luring us into this book? Or why does this book sometimes cause so much hatred in a person's heart? It's because it's alive and it talks to us 2,000 years later, the same as it talked to us in the day it was written. So we want to take a little time and study it. And hopefully next week, if y'all will help me remember, I was reading a magazine this morning, I guess, and it was talking about, you know, helpful tips for Bible study or whatever through the year. And one of the things that it said was like, during this month, read through the book of Proverbs for whatever day of the month you're on. So what is this? It's January 3rd. You're retired, you never know what it is. So we don't try to read.
I'm not numb yet.
But say today, read the third Proverbs chapter 3, so each day. And I thought when we do that, because it seems like we never do a lesson study of the book of Proverbs that I recall. So when we come in the next week, if anybody wants to try to read through Proverbs, and if there's anything in it that really spoke to you or whatever, we'll talk about it or we'll bring it up. And then people online too can type in if there's anything in it that just is really something that maybe all of us should think about, because it's a book of wisdom, I guess. And I don't know if I for sure can use a whole lot more wisdom. I've got a long way to go on that. So we will start. I'm going to just go ahead and read the verses. My daughter says she comprehends it better if you read the whole thing, start out than the verse to verse. So trying to get her to listen to me, so I'll read Matthew chapter 18. I'm going to read 1 through 14. It says, "At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and be as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must be needs that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. Wherefore, if thy hand or thy foot offend thee, cut them off, and cast them from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life halt or maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into everlasting fire. And if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life with 1 eye, rather than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire. Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which is lost. How think ye, if a man have 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, doth he not leave the 99 and goeth into the mountains, and seeketh that which is gone astray? And if so be that he findeth it, verily I say unto you, he rejoiceth more of that sheep than of the 99 which went not astray. Even so, it is not the will of your Father which is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish." There's something in the introduction I wanted to read to us too before I go on. It says, "Let us love and cherish Christian-minded friends. They bring a precious blessing to our houses, for they bring the gracious presence of Christ." I thought that was a real good statement, and I think my 2 people, Angie and Miss Simpson, would agree with that. It's as to having someone in your house with Christian. You just feel it when they come. You know, we've talked about people that come into the church that are full of the Spirit. It's just like you feel them ushered God into the building, and it gives me goosebumps talking about it, because it's just such a great feeling to know, and you know, when you're around such a person that you strive to be more like, you know, and that's what we're supposed to be doing with Jesus, is to strive to be more like Jesus every day. And we're not perfect, but we can do as good as we can and try to not mess up the next day. Okay. So we're going to start with Matthew 18, verse 1. It says, "At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest?" So apparently the disciples were kind of in a little myth between each other. And don't we do that? If there's 2 or 3 of us together, we want to be the favorite one or whatever. Or if you're gonna get something, if somebody's got something available, you know, you might be really good, so you're the one chosen to be able to have something. So that, and that's what the disciples weren't any different from us. They were fighting about over and bickering over who would be the greatest in the kingdom. And you know, their thoughts of the kingdom when Jesus came was like everybody else, that he was coming this time as the ruler, that he would take over the Roman Empire, that he would gain rule where they were under control of the Roman Empire. So these men were kind of fighting for a status in that empire, that they could be, you know, the right-hand man or something, once that rulership that in their mind they thought was going to start. So they were doing this. And it says in verse 2, and Jesus called a little child unto him and set him in the midst of them and said, verily I say unto you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. So he's telling them, you know, the attitudes that they had, the fight, and it says the apostles had shown rivalry, jealousy, ambition. They must turn away from such failings and learn a different lesson. Christ points to little children as the model to which the members of his kingdom must be. And it says the attributes of children, humility, unworldliness, simplicity, teachableness, which were the direct contraries. So if we think about kids, and you know, kids at a certain point, or as they get older, I know in school, can be mean little rascals. And as you can tell, she works with them. But, you know, that they kind of, you know, I guess where they see adults and see things happen, they really can make fun of other kids or do things. But we're talking about, you know, the children he's talking about, or the more tender age of the kid, that they are really humble, that they're very lovable, they're moldable, you know, I mean, and so you have a great responsibility as a parent, because these kids really are very teachable, listen to what you say. And you know, and I guess I hadn't thought of this till last night, but you think about kids, when you start bringing your children to church early, when they're very young, that they are very open and receptive to Christ. That, you know, they don't get these thoughts in their head, or they don't get their haughtiness that I can do this without them. They're just really soft and really receptive to the Lord. And, you know, some people say that they grew up and they always come to church, and they generally haven't gone through a lot of the heartaches that those more hard-headed of us that wait till later and I want to do my own thing and do that. That, you know, we saw some of what happened to David when he did his own thing. There's consequences that are longer lasting than what happens, that sometimes we make bad choices that keep, you know, that there's just, we've set something in motion that we can't change.
What is the verse that says, teach a child in the way he should go when he was old and not depart? There you go.
Yes, when you bring them up. And you see some kids, even at that point, I've seen some people that say, well, I tried and I took my child to church and I did this. But, you know, and a lot of times these kids possibly maybe go astray, but they know the truth. And they,
a lot of them come back.
Yes, they know that in their heart. They kind of have to get through their own stubbornness and go through it. But yes, it's very, you know, somebody in my family had said they didn't want their child to go to church when they were young because they weren't old enough to know and make a choice. And it's like, you know, that they are old enough to know when they're young, and that's the time that, you know, the best time to do it. When they, it says that Jesus, is what he's looking for, it says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Not the self-esteeming, proud man, but the humble, the lowly, the self-depreciating. You know, and when you look at these things in the Beatitudes, blessed are the meek and the poor. And in people's minds, you tend to think, well, I don't want to be that weak, poor, weak person or whatever. But to be that's not a lack of strength on your part. You know, it's more than otherwise. If you can tame your tongue, if you can treat people and act with humbleness, it takes a whole lot more character about you than to jump on somebody and grab. Because that's our nature. We kind of were born with that nature to act out or speak out or whatever. But to be humble and lowly takes some work.
I always think, I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. That's what the Bible says. Not in them exact words. But if I don't want to walk up and hit somebody or mouth somebody, I mouthed at people before. But would I want them to do that to me?
Exactly. Buford, can you hear when they speak online? Okay, good, because I just wanted, and that is true. You know, we've talked about when people see you out in the store or driving, we've talked about that a lot of times. If you're real ugly to somebody, and then later on down the line, you're somewhere and, hey, I go to the Nazarene Church, would you like to come up there? And you're the mean lady that they know is always at Walmart. If you take her parking spot, she's gonna run up over top of your car and pull it out or something. So it's, you know, it takes some effort to do these things. These aren't the easiest of things to do. And when you feel bad, you know, it's something that you have to work on no matter how you do, because people are watching all the time. And people, you know, their first thought is, you know, I want to cut down somebody that goes to church. Look how they act. Why would I want to go there as an excuse?
Gene had to take me out of the dollar store the other day. We was standing in line, and well, this one man had went out, and then I was up there, and there was another man in line. He was keeping his distance like he was supposed to. Well, honey, this little woman just pushes her buggy right up there in front of her, and him standing there, and I thought, Gene said, that's not any of your business, come on. But I thought, that was just rude. But he didn't say a word. Gene said, now could you stood there and done that? I said, I have, but people go in front of me if I've got a lot of stuff and you've got one or two things and I'm gonna make you stand there 15 or 20 minutes. But she didn't show no, you know, just
to go. And that's kind of the world. It's all about me. It's, I want out, I want to go through the line first.
I'm going to get there first.
Now,
daydreaming, or she may not even know.
Yeah, I was gonna say they changed the line over at the 5-Star at Lancaster, and I didn't know, and I kind of walked in like I usually did, and then I kind of looked, and it's like, oh, is that the line? You know, I didn't do it on purpose. But yeah, the line, they have changed the way the line went around there, and you can, but like you say, you know, you should be courteous to people. And like when I do that too, because sometimes they pay for the one thing while I'm putting my stuff on the counter or whatever, and you need to you know, make a point to be different than the world. It says in verse 4, whoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So by doing that, you know, you got God's attention, and that's, you know, when I started thinking last night, who do you expect to see? What kind of people, actions do you expect to see in heaven? You're not going to see road rage people and stuff like that. I mean, and actually on earth, when you go out and some people are just so angry, or they curse people or run them off the road or whatever, you know, heaven wouldn't be heaven if people were going to be acting like that, if you think about it. That's the thing, that it's not pleasant, to be around somebody that acts like that. So, you know, the people, as you gain control of your actions and reactions, you're in training for the person, you know, that you're gonna be the person that will be in heaven. You can't go and have all these terrible anger issues that you never get control. And you know, you can't do it on your own a lot of times. You have to have the help of the Lord to do that, because you know, this is kind of the way the world is. Facebook is a horrible thing for that, because, you know, you first preached about a lot of times, you can say and put and react in mean ways that you necessarily wouldn't do if you were having a conversation with people. And that's just, you know, and it can get you into a real bad habit. Lots of things are habitual. Once you start doing something and you get away with it, you're going to do it again and you're going to do it again. So we really got to check ourselves and be careful who we're with, too, which we'll talk about that later, because that makes a whole lot of difference with who you're with.
A lot of people try to push your buttons too, just to get you.
Sometimes your husband even.
Straight, yeah.
Does that.
Patty helps me.
We may have to all share a Patty.
Well, y'all can take my Patty.
And in verse 5 it says, "And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me." So, you know, the Lord is, we shouldn't take advantage of those that have of children literally, or those who have these childlike things. You know, you're getting on the Lord's turf at that point, because He has protection over them. That's what He expects us to come to Him with, this childlike attitude. In spirit, and it's like it says, it doesn't necessarily that he's just talking about a child at this point, but you know, we've talked about adults and children as far as the faith in Christ. When people first come to Christ, they're like children. They're new, they're learning. They need some people to teach them, some people to watch over them, and you have to watch that you don't expect them too much out of them that really turns them from the Lord, because I think the Lord watches into how we grow in young Christians, and how that they need mentors to look at. That, you know, there's always people that I know that I look at and just, you know, someday I want to be like that, and those people don't necessarily even know that people are watching them and striving to be more like them to do that. But those are things that the Lord expects out of us, is to train. And
You've got to teach the children. It's just like at school. Last year we had this one little boy, and you could tell he gets it at home. Very seldom did a good word come out of his mouth. And we'd sit down I sat down and talked to him, and I said, you shouldn't be talking like that. I said, those are not words you should be saying. Well, I'll do it at home. Mom and Daddy don't care. And I said, let's do it at home. Let's not do it here at school. But you shouldn't be not doing it, but see, you get into big trouble if you try.
And you have a very few hours compared to these children being exposed to other things.
This is them good little words.
Yeah. And some, you know, we just by doing things, they pick it up. You know, you don't have to say or so that's what, you know, important in both children and with Christians that are young Christians. You know, they're going to be watching the elders of the church and watch how they do, and watch how, you know, maybe like you said at school, it works here too, that we're one way here, but then we go out in the community and we're a totally different person, and we mistreat people, or we do things for cheat people for money or whatever. I mean, that you can.
Well, the teachers got him to, I can't remember what it was, and they taught him, now instead of saying this bad word, we're gonna say this word, and I can't remember what it was, Cookie Monster or something. Whenever he had one of them fits that he had to cuss, and at the end of the school, it was working, he had got to where he wasn't as bad. But when he come back to school this year, he'll
Get down where he's been, like you say, you'll have to start all over. Consistency is the thing I found with it.
you just gotta keep loving them.
Yeah, it's a training in progress for both kids and young Christians. It's a learning process that same as, you kind of grow and move up and closer to the Lord. But it takes somebody to take time to teach you, to be patient with you, and plus to point out those things in a way that, doesn't hurt you or doesn't destroy your relationship. There's ways, from school to teach, and they'll listen and
Just
keep
gotta,
it.
they need love, a lot of them, they want you just gotta love on them.
Yes.
He's the cutest little thing ever was. He's about this tall, wears his cowboy boots. One day he come in with a big cowboy hat. And I just think, you little booger brat, you got to stop that. And he'll just laugh.
But the time, like you say, your time spent when he grows may be well worth that.
I have looked back over my life before I was saved and where I was, and I think about how patient the church people were after I got saved. I thought, how did they ever put up with it? But that's what it's about. I mean, we can criticize, and then love that down. But we just have patience. I know that sometimes we have to speak out, I'm not saying that, but do it in love and compassion.
Right.
But we got to be patient. Just think about how the church people were patient with me. It kind of reminds me how much I need to be patient with others.
Because we've been there, sometimes, and I think kids think adults have never been there and know what they, and the same with our Christian brothers and sisters. We all started somewhere, and we need the patience and the continued patience, and also, like you said, with love, the correction that we give kids too. I mean, as young Christians, we need that correction in some way.
Just think about that amazing man up in that sky, all the children that he's got to be patient with and keep giving chances, and he keeps showing his love.
Yes, that he hasn't struck us all for things we've done, but yes, he is so
He
patient.
has been with me, because
And we need, that's the whole thing we talk about, trying to emulate Jesus' life and to be more like him. And he has this long patience that, if you step back and I know Tommy says a lot, you watch the news and what's happening in the world, and, especially child abuse and stuff like that. He's like, why doesn't God just strike them down right now? But if you think about it, the Lord could have struck us all down for something. I mean, there wouldn't be a person standing that if he didn't have this patience. And it's hard to understand when you look at that, but he is righteous, and all will be fulfilled and paid for in his time. I think sometimes
he's trying to give them a chance.
Yes,
To be saved.
He wants all to be saved.
All these people, yeah.
Yes, and very thankful for that if you think about family members and stuff. And it says in verse 6, but whosoever shall offend one of these little which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
If you've done something like we said, if you spoke out of hatred or some kind of illness, and I guess millstone's not something, but I guess I think of it better than a big concrete block thrown on you and you thrown out in the sea. But that's how angry it makes him. And the lesson says, it says to make a convert and then cause him to fall or permit him to fall through neglect is a grievous sin. So, you know, some things, so you see it in writing again to remind you, it says to cause him to fall. So, you know, you can do things that cause a person, you can kind of knowingly be cruel or a little more harsh than you should be and not give them a break. It says, though, to, or permit him to fall. So, you know, not even really doing anything mean to cause him, but just neglect, not taking the time to help, to see that somebody's having a problem or whatever. And, you know, same with that child, like if you just didn't pay any attention and let him go, he's gonna be in somebody else's class next year. We won't fool with him, we'll make it through this year. But, you know, you're permitting something to happen that you might could have had a good outcome if you had taken your time to, with that person. It says in verse 7, woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must need be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offenses come. In the book it says, he who leads others into sin is awfully guilty. It says, yet in all ages there have been multitudes who by persecution, threats, arts, allurements, and persuasion have endeavored to seduce Christians from the faith and lead them into sin. They have often much wealth or learning or accomplishment or professional influence, and they employ it for the sake of seducing the unwary and leading them into ruin. It says, no class of men have a more fearful account to render to God than they who thus lead others into vice and infidelity. And I don't know if you all have ever met people individually. I guess I think sometimes of Hollywood as a whole, the seducing, the shows, over the years, Andy Griffin, I think, is on at our house 24/7.
Over and over.
But if you look at television now, over the years, I've heard it said like there's a frog when you put in a pan of cold water and you slowly heat the water up. The TV shows, if you watch them, they add a little something and a little something over the years. They say or they do stuff that they wouldn't have done on Andy Griffin. But you watched it and you don't pay attention to it, and they even subtly put stuff in there that you're seeing that you don't even really realize at first until you take a look at it. But, you know, I think that's what the Lord's saying. These people that are doing these things, and some of them it says because they have much wealth or learning or accomplishment. If you talk to people, the more of these things they have, the harder it is for them to even fathom the thought of this holy God of the universe being more supreme than they are. You know, that they have kind of set themselves with their wealth and their accomplishments and their schooling and their education up so high that they have no open childlike heart to be willing to even listen to anything of the Lord. They count on themselves and they assume that this wealth or position is always going to take them where they want to go in the world. You know, when it's sad, a lot of people live their whole life that way. I'll say it's sad, but it's not sad if you leave the world. And then, you know, at a later stage in life, that they become a believer and a Christian, and they look back and they see the years that you've missed, the peace and the joy that you've had, that money never gives you. You know, when you look at people millionaires that you think, why should they have a problem in the world? Sometimes they have more problems, more heartaches. Nobody really cares about them. They care more for their money. They're real dissatisfied. They look and they look and they don't find the one piece that's missing that money can't buy in their life. So, that's a sad life to think you have it all and then realize you have nothing. it says in verse 8, wherefore if thy hand or thy foot offend thee, cut them off and cast them from you. It is better for thee to enter into the life halt or maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast in everlasting fire. So, things that cause us to stumble, I don't think he means literally cutting your hands off or your feet, but I think if it comes to such, do that. One thing it's saying, such occasions of sin we must at once and absolutely cast aside. So it's saying, these things that we see are causing us big problems, you can't deal with them and think you're going to deal with them and end them. You got to end it. And it also says, it includes also persons as well as things that get in our way. It says also in the lesson here, loneliness, isolation is better than companionship and wickedness. So there's things, if we think we're lonely or whatever, you hear a lot of people that have drug or alcohol problems that they run with a group that builds on this, that they all have a light desire for it. And this is saying to put yourself away from that. If it's people, I've heard people say, well, since I've become a Christian, I don't have any more friends now. But, it's better to not have those friends that are dragging you down into the pits of hell than to have a whole bunch of friends that are destroying your life. Sometimes people can't see that until they're at the lowest point in their life, that they realize what destruction that this has caused. And Jesus is saying here, you have to cut all ties with such things that drag your life down. And like we say, it's hard. Sometimes it might be a family member even that does that, and that's even harder to get away or to change. And it says, and if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life with one eye rather than having 2 eyes and being cast into hellfire. And it says in the lesson, I'll read one part of it, it says, if Christ speaks of hell, then there is a hell. If he says it's eternal, then it is so. Of this we may be sure, that every word which the God of mercy has spoken upon about punishment of the wicked is full of meaning. So, there's a lot of, I think even churches now that have kind of washed over the fact that, this loving God of the universe that wants us all to be saved and to come to him, it would never make a hell for people. He talks of hell. There is a hell. We can cover over it. We can pretend it doesn't exist. But if you read and study your Bible, it does exist. He speaks of it on multiple occasions. In fact, he mentions it again in the verses that we're going to read. So it's something that's looming if we don't do these things, take precautions of these. But also there is a heaven looming for the ones that do. And I don't guess looming is a good word for that because it's better than we can ever imagine. It says in verse 10, take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father, which is in heaven. I want to read a little bit about it here. It says, do not imagine that it is of no account how you treat even one of these little ones, the children, the weak, the poor, the ignorant. Let not earth despise those who heaven respects. And one thing that I don't know if anybody knows, I've never noticed this before, reading it over and over and over, but let's look at what it says. It says, take heed that no one despise one of these little ones, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of the Father who is in heaven. We always think that we have a guardian angel that watches over us. We kind of can imagine, and as kids especially, that there's this angel about it. But that's not what this says. It says that in heaven they're angels with an S. So we have, and it doesn't say how many, it doesn't say if there's 2, if there's 10, but we have, you know, the children of God have angels that he's appointed to watch over them, to care for them. And then also it says, the angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. So if you think about it, these angels that have charge and they're watching over you, they have audience with the Lord of the universe. They see what's going on with you. They are your protection, and they have audience with the Lord to make sure that you are taken care of in that. It says, for the Son of Man is come to save that which is lost. How think ye, if a man have 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, doth he not leave 99 and go into the mountains and seeketh that which is gone astray? So, you know, we had talked about a couple weeks ago, and you all just brought it up then, the Lord wants us all to be saved. You know, if he's got this whole church is full of people that have came, but one person is out there that's lost their way during COVID, which is easy to do because, you know, churches have really disbanded, and you know, we talk about the church. It's not, you don't have to come to church to be saved. You don't have to set this building to do that. You can be saved at your house. But this church is our safe place. It's where a lot of people that think like we do, you get fed. You get to be around people of like-mindedness, and it builds you up. But, you know, it's saying that the Lord, if there's one person that's fallen out, he's going to leave the people sitting in here and go and try to find that person. And you know, and it even means more if we're that person that he does that to. It means a lot to us if we know we're the one that he's been willing to walk out to seek. And it says, and if so be that he find it, verily I say unto you, he rejoiceth more of that sheep than of the 99 which went not astray. Wanted to read you in the book. It says, the quest is not sure to be rewarded. Man's perversity makes the result uncertain. No one may safely go on sinning or living in careless unconcern with the expectation of being finally found and saved. There is a limit to the patience of the Lord. If a man will not open his heart to good inspirations and cooperate with preventing grace, he will not be found and brought home. God forces no one to be saved against his will. And that's something, you know, that we need. The Lord does go out and seek us. And, you know, when he seeks us, like we said, when the 99 are there, and he'll seek us. But if we continue to turn against that, it's not going to be that he's always going to seek us, because he's not going to force us. He's given us free will to serve him or not to serve him. And that's finally, you know, we've talked about that you can't be saved for somebody else. You can speak to them, you can pray for them, you can direct them, but they're the one that has to make that decision. And no matter how close that person is to you or how much you love them, it's ultimately that person's decision to do that. And, you know, some people want to put it off, I've got tomorrow, but we never know that. We don't know what can happen when we walk out the doors, or we don't know what tomorrow brings. It says, even so, it is not the will of the Father which is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. So, you know, he, as we say, he comes after each and every one of us a multitude of times, but he will not force us. Eddie, you want to answer any questions?
Yeah. You know, it's you talk about it there. I've seen people have the worst work in the world, and I know this is looking at. And a lot of times they come out and they just correct. I ain't just gonna be watching over.
Yeah, you see cars that are smashed flat. Yeah. So, and now we know that there are multiple angels that do that, but.
Rhonda, it's funny you talk about that. I was just thinking about it last night. You know, Brother Goins used to tell me, I'd go out and visit people, tell them about God and Jesus, and, you know, seem like I stand back there at the door, one none of them coming in, you know, just every now and then. And I felt like about a foot tall, you know, something's wrong with me. You know, I'm not doing something right or something. And I talked with Brother Gomes, and I said, I need to get more prayer, because, you know, something, the people ain't coming in. And he said, no, he said, yes, you are. He said, what you're doing, you're planting the seed. And God will make it grow. He said, you wait on him. And that helped me.
Yeah, you know, do it in his will to ask the people, because you can't, you know, if you could, you drag your whole family in and chain them in seats and stuff. But you know, you have to, like you said, plant the seed and wait for God to grow that, or send, you know, somebody else might come after you come, and they would come to church after that.
He's giving me one more chance.
Yes, absolutely. Our first question here, it says, what type of kingdom did the disciples expect Jesus to set up? They were all arguing about who's going to be the first.
That they were gonna be the main ones.
He thought it was going to be a great kingship of conquerors that you know, and Jesus is going to come as a conqueror. He just hasn't done it yet. That wasn't his mission on his first trip. He came as our Savior to forgive us our sins on the first time, but when he comes the next time, it will be this kingdom that they were looking for, not on earth, but what they expected of him the first time. It says, what qualities in children are necessary in Christians?
What was that?
What qualities in children are necessary in Christians? Like that we talked about their humbleness,
Yeah, we gotta be like kids.
like their honesty and their softness, their heart is moldable. You know, we can come in with a stubborn, haughty heart and learn anything. You can't learn anything
Right.
that way. You know, sometimes, and I know I hear Buford and other preachers talk about how you can see on people's faces out in the audiences how receptive they are to what you're saying, and you know, you really can if you come in and you're set against something that you're going to learn, or you're going to take anything out with you. How may we offend a little one? That's something that's worth us talking about again.
Say it again.
How may we offend a little one?
That attitude.
As how we teach
Not teaching them.
Christians. And this, I think we need to remember this. It said a lesson to make a convert and then cause him to fall. So how we have a person come into the church and then we do something, or we act in a way that causes him, why would I go there? You know, I had a friend that I worked with that didn't go to church, and one of the TV pastors, something happened, and she made the point, why would I want to be part of that? You know, and we can act in a way that people that aren't Christians think, I can act better than that on my own. And then the second part, I think we overlooked, it says, or permit him to fall through neglect. So like Jack was saying, you know, if you can go and you can sow the seeds, but also if that seed begins to grow, you know, it's part of our responsibility to continue, you know, to go visit. Then I've heard him say, if Brother Goins had just all of a sudden just forgot about you and never came back to visit, you think you would have continued necessarily? That you know, part of it is in a garden, people that grow gardens, you don't neglect it, you're not going to get anything from it if you neglect it. The weeds are going to take it over, and you're, you know, and that's the same with young Christians. What we do. Has anybody got anything else to add or anything to point out that we didn't? And Angie made it through the whole lesson.
I did close.
Rhonda, I think another thing too, you talked about kids, young Christians, that, you know, a lot of times we try to get them off milk too fast and on the meat. You know, in a sense of speaking, we throw them into something, too quick to let them grow.
Right. You need to realize where they are, not where you are necessarily, and teach them. All right, well, we will have about 10 minutes when we get in service, I guess. Thank y'all.
How you doing?